The kid died on the back seat of his ambulance when the rig was already on the highway, taking him not to the nearest hospital, but to the one with shorter wait times. Eric knew it because he saw the monitor switch from a ragged line to a flat one, and for a couple of seconds he just stared at it, squeezing an empty syringe of Narcan he had given too late. The smell of cheap fast food from the paper bag on the floor mixed with sour sweat. The siren screamed, and inside him there was nothing at all, as if he had switched off together with that heart. Eric Hunt, a 38-year-old paramedic in Tulsa, Oklahoma, was seen by many as a hero because for 15 years he had been pulling people out of car wrecks, overdoses, and heart attacks on the long roads around the city. But a year ago, he made one cynical decision. He decided that yet another teenager with an overdose could wait, and he did not go to the nearest ER. He chose to optimize the route, and the kid died in his truck. Now the City Health Commission had put his case on a public agenda. Local news turned the story into a scandal, and Eric's own son had stopped looking him in the eye. His stake was simple and terrifying. He was afraid not so much of losing his job as of finally losing the right to call himself a man who honestly served his community. Eric grew up in a small town north of Tulsa, in the family of a mechanic and a cashier at the roadside grocery store. His childhood passed between long strips of asphalt, his father's old pickup, and Friday night games of the high school team at the local stadium where the whole town came. Early on, he understood that in places like this, people were saved not by politicians and speeches, but by those who arrived first: firefighters, paramedics, nurses. So after school he went to paramedic courses, worked nights at a gas station, drank coffee from plastic cups, and dreamed about real health insurance and his own family. 15 years of service rushed by in endless shifts. He got used to cold takeout pizza in the ambulance, to night calls to empty mall parking lots, to the smell of fried fries from nearby fast food joints mixing with blood and medicine. Sometimes he truly saved people, sometimes he arrived too late, but he always convinced himself he was doing everything he could. He missed dozens of his son's high school games because he was on the road or on a call, and every time he promised he would make it next time. The mistake happened late in the fall, when the stadium roared again and he was transporting a 17-year-old boy with an overdose. Irritated and exhausted after a 13-hour shift, he decided it was just another junkie from a bad neighborhood and drove to the hospital where the ER was less busy. He broke protocol, did not give the second dose of Narcan on time, and then spent a long time writing the report so that formally everything looked correct. He felt ashamed almost immediately, but pushed that feeling deeper because he had another shift coming up and a mortgage to pay. When it turned out that the dead kid was his son's classmate and a player on the same high school team Eric never had time to watch, the shame became unbearable. The boy's parents filed a complaint, a local TV channel ran a story, and the City Health Commission opened an investigation. And now, a year later, he had to speak at a city council meeting where they were debating ambulance reform. He understood he could stay quiet behind the lawyer's wording and hide, or he could tell the truth and lose everything, but keep something important inside. The first scene began on an ordinary morning. Eric sat in his old pickup on the parking lot in front of the EMS building, holding a hot coffee in a white plastic cup and staring at his phone screen. On the screen there was a short text from his son. "Don't come to the game today. It's not for you anyway." He is afraid of me, he thought, or he despises me, and I did this myself. He saw a local TV reporter with a cameraman walking toward the station door, saw the microphone with the logo, felt his shoulders tighten. The reporter said, "Mr. Hunt, can we get a couple of questions before the meeting?" "I have to start my shift," he answered too sharply and threw the empty cup into the trash can. "People want to know what you will say to the boy's family," she said, not stepping back. "First, I want to decide what I will say to my own son," he said, and walked past her. He felt anxiety and anger, but he understood that his real problem was not the reporters. It was the year he had spent running from his own decision. That evening at home he was not met by news and dinner, but by cold silence. His son was sitting at the kitchen table in a T-shirt with the school team logo, doing homework. A backpack and a crumpled lunchbox lay beside him. On the stove, boxed mac and cheese was cooling, smelling of cheap cheese and fried bacon. Eric asked, "How was practice?" and leaned against the fridge. "Fine," his son said without lifting his head. "I thought maybe I could drop by the game tomorrow," Eric said. "Don't," his son answered, and the pencil in his hand squeezed so hard it nearly snapped. "I'm trying," Eric began. "You're trying for a year to write an honest report instead of an excuse." His son cut him off and finally looked up. "You knew him, Dad. You saw his name on the chart." Eric exhaled heavily. "I was tired. It's not an excuse, but," he said. "You were a coward," his son said, and there was no yelling in his voice, only exhaustion. "And if tomorrow you're going to talk about protocols again and not about what you really did, you don't have to come back." My own kid is telling me the truth I can't tell myself, Eric thought. Does a hero even have a right to be this weak? He understood he had failed not only that call, but the whole year after, when he kept silent at home. The next day his EMS chief called him in. The office was small, with a view of the long parking lot where white ambulances stood in a neat row. On the chief's desk there was a stack of folders and a cardboard cup with the logo of that same roadside store where everyone bought their coffee. "Look, Eric," the chief said, opening a folder, "the city council lawyers drafted a statement. You don't need to improvise. You talk about fatigue, about workload, about systemic issues. No, I'm guilty, got it?" "But I am guilty," Eric said quietly. "We're all guilty," the chief replied, waving it off with irritation. "We're short-staffed, we pull 14-hour shifts, the insurance companies cut payments, the health commission is squeezing us. If you go out there and start beating your chest, they'll bury us under protocols and cuts." "And if I stay quiet," Eric said, "I won't be able to look my patients in the eye anymore." "Think about your mortgage, about your son," the chief said. "Being a hero is not about giving pretty speeches at meetings. It's about just showing up for your shift every day." He says the right words, Eric thought, but they are not about me. He left the office holding the folder and with a clear feeling that his real battle would not be with the commission, but with his own fear. Before the meeting, he did something he had been avoiding all year. He drove to the house of the dead boy's family. A small house with a faded flag on the porch, an old pickup in the driveway, a basketball hoop above the garage. The yard smelled of wet grass and fried chicken from a bag of fast food someone had just brought home. The boy's mother opened the door right away. Her face was tired, with dark circles under the eyes. "How can I help you, Mr. Hunt?" she said in a flat voice. "I came to apologize," he said. "Not officially, just as a person." "You already wrote your report," she answered. "I read it. There was not much humanity in it." "I made a bad decision that night," he said, feeling his throat tighten. "I thought about time, about workload, about numbers. I did not think about him as a person." "He was a person," she said. "He was 17. He was tired too. He did stupid things too. But you were the adult." "I know," Eric said. "And if tomorrow I have a chance to say this in public, I will. Not to wash my hands, but so others do not do the same." She was silent for a long time, looking past him at the long street where cars were rolling slowly by the roadside store. Then she said quietly, "If tomorrow you talk about the system and about being tired again and do not say his name, then don't come here anymore." She is giving me a chance not to lie, Eric understood as he walked away from her house. Back at work, he almost mechanically went out on the next call. An unconscious man near a coin laundry. Gray parking lot, worn sneakers on the patient's feet, a paper fast food bag, and spilled coffee next to him. Once, Eric would already have decided who this guy was and acted on autopilot. He knelt down, noting every detail with his eyes. "What is your name?" he asked while giving the injection. The man groaned, then swore as he came around. Joe," he croaked. "Joe," Eric said, "you were very close to not waking up." In the rig, he did not turn off the siren until they reached the nearest hospital, even though the dispatcher suggested going to another, less busy one. Then he spent another 10 minutes sitting with Joe in the ER while the nurses did the paperwork and even bought him a sandwich from the vending machine. I cannot bring that kid back, he thought, but I can at least stop bargaining with my conscience every time. That same night, he drove to the high school stadium. The floodlights were still on, the cleaning crew was picking up trash after the game, the air smelled of wet grass and popcorn. His son sat on the bleachers, holding a plastic bottle of water and staring at his phone. "I went to his mom," Eric said as he climbed the steps. "So?" his son asked without looking up. "She said that if tomorrow I talk about the system again and not about what I did, she has nothing to say to me," Eric said. His son finally looked up. "And what are you going to talk about?" he asked. "About what I did," Eric said, "and about what I want to change in our service, not just for me." His son nodded but said nothing. After a pause, he added, "I'll be watching the stream, and if you lie, I'll know." He is still giving me a chance, Eric realized, and felt a strange mix of fear and determination. The city council chamber was packed. Plastic chairs, local news cameras, members of the health commission flipping through folders without looking up. On the wall hung a flag, under it a microphone. Eric sat in the front row, squeezing the same folder that held the impersonal lawyer's text. "Next we will hear from paramedic Eric Hunt," the chair announced. He got up, felt his palms sweating, and stepped up to the microphone. "My name is Eric Hunt," he said. "I have worked as a paramedic in Tulsa for 15 years. He heard someone cough, heard a camera click. "In those years I have had more than 2,000 calls," he went on. "I have pulled people out of smashed cars on the highway, out of dirty motels, out of neat suburban homes. I have drunk liters of cheap coffee from plastic cups, eaten cold pizza on parking lots, missed my son's high school games because I was on the road. I got used to thinking that was enough to call myself someone who serves this city." He paused and looked at the commission members and at the dead boy's mother sitting in the back row. "A year ago I made a decision I am ashamed of," he said. "That night I looked at the kid in my rig and thought he was just another teenager with an overdose. I was at the 13th hour of my shift. We were short-staffed. The dispatcher was talking about overloaded ERs. I decided I could drive to a farther hospital so I could clear my shift faster. I delayed the second dose of Narcan. I broke protocol because I wanted to make my night easier." He felt his voice tremble, but did not stop. "His name was Zach," he said. "He was my son's classmate and a player on their team. I saw his last name on the chart, but I let myself think of him as another case. And he died on my back seat while I was driving down the highway thinking about statistics." The room was completely silent. "I could stand here and talk only about the system," Eric went on, "about how we pull 14-hour shifts, how insurers cut payments, how EMS is underfunded. All of that is true. But it is also true that at that moment I was the one behind the wheel, and I chose convenience over conscience." He took a deep breath. "I am not asking you to ignore my mistake," he said. "I am ready to accept disciplinary action. I am ready to answer to Zach's family and to my own son. But I do not want this to end only with that. I am asking you to let me stay in the service and lead a program that changes how we look at overdose patients. I want our protocols to include not only times and transport choices, but training on how not to turn a living person into a case." He listed dry details, how many shifts in a row they pull, how many minutes they try to save by choosing farther hospitals, how many similar situations they had that year. He named the amounts of insurance penalties, the names of colleagues who burned out and quit. "I am not a saint," he finished. "I am a man who made a serious mistake and lives with it every day. If you decide I should not run calls anymore, I will accept that. But if you decide to give me a chance to fix not only my own error, but a systemic one, I will work so that none of us ever again chooses the short road down the highway at the price of someone else's life." He stepped back from the microphone and, for the first time in a year, felt that the fear of losing his job was smaller than the fear of staying someone who lied to himself. That evening he sat in his backyard. An old plastic table, disposable plates, a small grill where hot dogs were slowly cooking. In the back of the yard his pickup loomed in the dark. By the road stood a mailbox stuffed with bills and flyers. Inside, the TV was droning the news about the meeting, someone on screen arguing about healthcare reform. His son walked out onto the porch with a plate, sat down across from him, and put his phone on the table. "I saw it," he said simply. "You said his name." "I had to," Eric answered. "It won't bring him back." "No," his son agreed, "but maybe now you'll be different on your shifts." They sat in silence, listening to the distant noise from the stadium where the team was practicing for the next game. The smell of grilled meat, cheap drip coffee in Eric's mug, and damp autumn grass blended into the quiet, ordinary smell of everyday American life, for which each of them now carried a little more honest responsibility. This story did not erase what happened on the back seat of that ambulance, and did not turn Eric into a flawless hero, but it made him an adult man who no longer hid behind a uniform and a system, and who accepted responsibility in front of those who lived nearby, drove down the same long roads, bought coffee at the same roadside store, and believed that someone would show up and do everything possible for real.